Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Out of Luck Pelican, and I'm going to be sipping on my Earl Grey tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. For my paint today, I have acrylic paint. My colors are titanium white, ultramarine blue, Mars black, deep yellow, green oxide, burnt umber, which I will call brown, and fire red. And of course you can switch up those colors as well, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I will be using for drawing later. And then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paint and brushes, and even the piece of chalk is all there for you. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so we're going to be doing, for the first step, is we're going to be painting the first layer of our water. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are blue and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do a gradient of it being a little bit darker at the top, and it's going to fade down to a little bit lighter of a blue. So what I'm going to first do is I'm actually going to pre-mix myself a blue that's a little bit lighter than my ultramarine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a little bit of my ultramarine and set it aside, because I'm going to want to use that in its real color later. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of my white and blend it in with my blue. So the reason why I am adding a little bit of white to my blue is so it does not so it's not as see-through, so it has a little bit more opacity to it. And I also just kind of want to have more of a soft, chalky kind of blue underneath, or as a base coat for my water, as opposed to that real vibrant ultramarine blue. So this is about where I'm headed with it. So once you've got it into the shade that you like, what we're going to do is we're going to start up at the top with it being really dark, or as dark as this blue is, and then as we come down towards where the little pier is going to be, it'll be lighter and lighter. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to take my dirty brush and I'm going to pick up a touch of white, because what I want to do is I'm going to outline where my pier is going to be so I know where to stop my sky. So on the right hand side, I'm going to come up about 1/4 of the way up my canvas, make myself a little bit of a mark. And then on the left-hand side, at the bottom of my canvas, I'm going to make myself a little bit of a mark down in the bottom. And I'm just going to connect these two with kind of an arcing line. You don't even need to use a lot of paint, or it doesn't need to be super dark right now. All I'm really looking to do is give myself some sort of outline where I know I'm going to stop that water. So once I've got that on there, I'm just going to pick up some of my full-on pre-mixed soft blue that I've created, and I'm just going to be adding this in a left to right brush stroke. I'm going for a pretty solid color as my base coat, but you could certainly make yours, you know, with more movement in it. You can certainly have yours already looking like there's waves in it, but really I'm just going to kind of go for a nice solid color right now and get it to go a little bit lighter as it comes down towards the base of the canvas where that pier is. So right about halfway down my water, somewhere about here, I'm going to start picking up both my blue plus white on my brush. So I've got my blue and I'm going to pick up a little bit of white also. So what this is going to do is it's going to naturally get it to go a little bit lighter and lighter as I go down towards that pier area. I don't want it to go all the way white, but I do definitely want it to get a little bit lighter as it's coming down towards that pier area. So that way, when we add our movement into our water, we'll already have a nice base underneath that's going to show us that it's getting lighter and lighter as it comes down towards the bottom here. And then as I get towards my outline, I am going to remain with a left to right brush stroke in through here, but I want to keep that left to right brush stroke. I don't want it to actually look like I'm painting around it like this. I want to continue to utilize that left to right brush stroke so it gives the illusion of that water being on a level kind of playing field as opposed to it being tipped. So if it looks like it's tipped, it might end up looking like we are on the side of, like we're on a ship or something. So I'm going to just kind of continue to have my brush go left to right. Even if I bump into my line, that's okay. I'm totally cool with that. I know that we're going to be cleaning up that edge in a minute anyway, so I'm all right with that. And then once I've got this on here, I will be washing and drying this large brush because I'm going to be utilizing it for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our pier. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. I'm going to be using black, brown, and white, and I want this to look like pavement or cement of sorts, so I'm going to have various tones in it. We will be coming back through in a little while to put a little detail type of edge on it, but right now I'm just looking for a base coat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown, put some splotches of brown on here, pick up a touch of black, put some black splotches on here. I didn't wash my brush, and now I'm going to pick up some white without washing my brush and just kind of loosely get them to blend in with one another. I'm not looking for a solid type of color. I want it to look like there is some light spots and some dark spots, and it's got that look of maybe some dirty pavement or some kind of walkway of sorts. So I'm just kind of using a left to right kind of crisscross motion, but you could certainly use circles. You could really use whatever type of brush stroke that you want. And then when I come up towards this edge, I'm just going to go a little bit slower, get the edge to be a little bit cleaner, but it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly executed, because when I look at piers or docks or anything that are along the edge of water, they always seem to have some sense of weathered aspect to them, like the edges are chipped or they've got some, you know, rough spots from people picking at them, or, you know, storms going by and stuff. So I always anticipate the edges to be a little bit rough when I'm doing anything near the water's edge. And then once we've got this step all nice and done, we will be using the same brush for the next step. So you can just kind of fiddle with this all you want. And then once you've got it all nice and set, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our water. I'm going to be using my big brush. The colors that I'm using are brown, green, ultramarine blue, my water blue, which is the lighter blue, and white. And what I'm in essence going to do is I'm going to add my ripples and my movement to my water. I want this water to look like it's going off into the distance. So I'm going to have my ripples more dramatic in through here and kind of bigger and more evident. I'm also going to have them lighter in through here, so I'll have more white ones over here on the left side. And then as I go into the top of my water, or the water that's farthest away, it's going to be darker, and the ripples are going to be less evident, so there'll be probably more of them but closer together. So I'm gonna, and just before, a little kind of quick tip here too. Before you start this step, you do want to make sure that your first layer is dry. So this is that time where you can take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find a fun fanning method with a piece of paper towel or blowing on it. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and blow dry it that way. That'll get it nice and dry, nice and quickly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be starting with my dark colors of my ripples. So I'm going to actually load my brush with a little bit of brown, green, and ultramarine blue. I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm going to just kind of be doing these long, broad kind of strokes that are going to give it a little bit of movement, which is going to, because I have that pretty dark blue underneath, this is going to just add to the depth and the dimension to the water. So these different colors within it are going to provide me with a good diversity in this deep dark water. So I'm just kind of adding in pretty broad strokes these additional colors, and as I come down towards the lighter area, I will start utilizing some of my original blue on my brush as well as white, but I'm gonna hold off on the white for just a minute. Let me get some of this a little bit more kind of worked out, so I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm still keeping some of that background color showing. You can also dip your brush a little bit in water, like your water cup. That way you can have more translucent paint as you're going through this process, so you can ensure that you'll be able to see some of that background color. So that will prevent you from kind of going too wild and crazy and covering up all that bottom, all that base color that you put on there initially. So as I'm coming down towards this center area, I'm still just kind of picking up blue, brown, and green, and I'm going to start to give myself kind of more visual lines where I can see them a little bit better than I did up top. So I'm doing them a little bit more narrow, a little bit more higher contrast, so they are darker in comparison to the background that they're sitting on. So you'll be able to see them a little bit more. So if I pick up every now and again, I can pick up my background color, and as I work my way into this lighter zone, because I'm using that original kind of darker blue that we used at the top of the sky, this will help me to kind of gradually get it to go a little bit lighter and lighter as I'm coming down towards the base of the water in through here. And you can kind of play with the light spots and dark spots that you already had in your water from that first go around. So when you're doing water, if you want it to look a little bit more natural, instead of just going left to right, if you almost kind of just think of it as like these long diamond type of shapes throughout the water, that will help you to give it a pretty natural look as far as those ripples and waves kind of go in. I have not picked up white yet. I will kind of wait until I've got as many ripples and waves and stuff as I want before I start adding the white, because I know the second that I start adding white onto my brush, all of this could potentially get too smooth looking and too kind of muddled. So I'm really just kind of reserving myself, or kind of holding back a bit as I'm adding these waves, holding back to add that white onto here. But kind of, I'm pretty much digging this. I think I'm going to add, oops, I accidentally picked up white there as I was saying, don't pick up white, and I just accidentally picked it up. But I'm just kind of maneuvering this and getting it as much into the as many waves on here as I want before I start picking up that white. And I'm thinking this is looking pretty darn good. I'm going to start picking up a little bit of white on my brush without washing it. And now I can just start to add these really brighter ones that I feel I would have closer to the dock over on this side, because to me my light source is coming from over on the left hand side. So I'm going to add some extra little sparkles into the water over on the left side, so that way it tells the viewer, starts to explain to the viewer where that light source is coming from. And I'm just going to kind of trail it off into some of these. And then you can just kind of step back from your painting, let it dry for a minute, see if you want to fiddle with it at all, adding more or less of your waves. And then we are going to be switching to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and complete and you've made any little adjustments that you want, you can put this large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our dock or pier, whatever you'd like to call this. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, white, and yellow. And how I'm going to do this, I want mine to look like there's a little bit of a ledge at the edge of it. So I'm going to separate the ledge from the floor, I guess is a good way to put it. So I'm going to start with black paint on my brush, and I'm going to come down from here maybe about an inch, somewhere in through here. And then over on the left hand side, I'm going to come in from the bottom left in about an inch, and then make myself another little marker there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect here to here with a line, but I want it skinny at this end and wider at this end. So what I'm going to do is I've got my black paint on my brush, and I'm just kind of going in this direction, following kind of the arc of my exterior of my pier. And I'm just going to color this in and make this line wider as it gets to this end. And what I'm doing here is I'm giving this a little bit of perspective. This is going to be the underside or the back side of the actual ledge. And because I'm getting it to go, this line to go wider as it comes towards the left of my canvas, this is going to make this edge look like it is closer to us. So I'm just kind of coloring this in with black to insinuate that this is also being shadowed by the beautiful sun that's over on this left-hand side. So now that I've got that in there, it's a little bit wider on this left-hand side, and it's more narrow over on the right-hand side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a shadow and a highlight to the floor. So if my light is over on the left-hand side, my shadow would be cast from this ledge here. So I'd have a shadow here, and it'd be brighter over on that right-hand side. So I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to kind of wipe it off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown. So right now I have black and a little bit of brown on my brush, and I'm going to put a dark area on the floor or the surface of this of the ground right in this corner, insinuating that it is being shadowed by the edge of the pier. And then I'm going to go over onto the right hand side. Without washing my brush, I just picked up some white paint, and I'm going to get this side a little bit lighter. So you could really have a lot of fun playing with the intensity of the shadow versus the highlight. If you want to get this edge a little bit smoother as it is meeting the bottom of the wall, you can certainly play with that. And you just kind of keep working these colors till you feel nice and comfortable with what is happening. You can have a gradual shadow coming in through here. So just something where it reads as this area over on the right hand side is being lit up by the sun, and this area over on the left hand side is having a shadow kind of cast upon it by this edge here. And then I'm going to do something similar on the edge up here. I really want to have the light source over here. So to me, the top of the ledge would be the lightest up here. So I'm loading my brush with white. I think I'm going to widen this a little bit more so it reads more as being closer to us. So I just put white on my brush, and I'm going to bring this similar in through here. I think I'm going to bring this over into this direction. So this brings it a little bit wider in through here. And then for me, I know that this is going to be the edge of it on top. So you could get this little front or the edge to be pretty darn light, and that will tell the viewer that it is, you know, catching a good amount of that sun. But you don't need this top platform to be painted in 100%. I really just want it to be lighter than here to insinuate that it's catching some of the sun. This is where I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of yellow to give myself a little bit more sunshine on top of that exterior or that ledge up there. And you can certainly play with this a little bit more if you wanted to go lighter or darker. I think I'm going to put a little bit of brown on my brush to maybe give myself a little edge. Maybe there's a little kind of lip to the edge of this platform area. So I just put a little bit of brown on my brush. And of course you can keep fiddling with this all you want, but we are going to be utilizing our chalk for the next step. So once you've got your pier all nice and completed here, and if you have any adjustments, feel free to make them, and then you can put your brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to outline where our sign is going to go. We're going to be using our piece of chalk, and I'm going to give you some markers. We'll just connect the dots, and then by the time we're done, we'll have a sign that looks like it's tipped a little bit. So I'm going to have my sign in this vicinity of my canvas. I want it to look like it's kind of tilted or facing my bird a little bit. So for perspective purposes, I'm going to have it smaller on the right and taller on the left. So my first marker is going to be right about here. So this is about 1.5 inches in from the side of my canvas, and maybe 1 inch and a little bit more coming down that direction. I'm going to come down to almost I would say the halfway marker of my canvas and come in just about as far as I came in on that top one. So the right side of the sign, I want the height of it to be smaller than this. So what I'm going to do, I'm having it, if this is about halfway in my canvas, I'm like 3 inches to the left of that, and I need the bottom line to be up a little bit from this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to travel over from here, travel to the left until I get about as far over as I want, and then I'm going to come up about 1/2 inch to 1 inch and make myself a marker. And I'm going to do the same thing here, only I'm going to come down. So I'm going to travel across, and then I'm going to come down just a little bit. And these two here will be the equal distance from the edge of my canvas. And then I'm just going to connect the dots. So we've got 2 vertical lines and 2 diagonal lines. So what's going to happen is this will end up looking like it's got a little bit of perspective to it. And then I'm going to give myself a post. So my post I want to be vertical and about the center of here. It might be a little bit to the right to make the left side look a little bit bigger, which would mean give it even more perspective. So if you find your center point, what looks to be the center, and then just go over to the right just a tiny bit and come straight down. And I'm going to have mine maybe about 1/2 inch wide, so you can just kind of keep making that as wide as you want it. And that's all we're going to do for the outline. So you can put your chalk down. We'll use our medium brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm doing my base coat for my sign. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and white paint. So how I'm going to do this is I am going to be pre-mixing a gray color. I will be using this gray color as the base coat for my bird as well. So you want to make sure that you mix a good amount of it. So I'm going to take some of my white, even if it's my dirty white, you can still use your dirty white, and I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. I'm going to keep some of my pristine white for later, but right now I'm just making myself I like a medium gray. You don't want it to be too dark because it will dry a little bit darker than it is when it's wet. So I'm going somewhere in this vicinity for my gray color, maybe a little bit lighter. I think I'm going to add a touch more white to it. And just add your black a little bit at a time. It can very easily, the black can take over. So just, add it a little bit at a time. And this is about the color that I'm going. So once I've got my desired shade of gray that I want, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I just totally stuck my finger in a whole bunch of wet paint on my brush. That felt a little yucky there. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to paint the post in through here just with that flat gray color. When I go to do my the sign portion, I'm going to start the illusion of it being tipped with a little bit of dimensional aspect to it. Not only is it tipped like this, but I want it to be darker on the right and lighter on the left. So I'm going to utilize my gray color over on the right hand side, and then as I work my way towards the left hand side of it, I'm going to be picking up white as well. So I'm really just getting this gray on here over on the right hand side. Like half of it is what I'm going to be painting in with the gray. I'm going right to my chalk mark, but if I don't get all the way to the edge, or if there's a little chalk mark left over, that's okay, because I can wash it away with a little bit of water. But I'm just kind of getting my gray on here, and you'll notice as my gray is drying, it will get darker and darker. So now that I've got about half of it covered, now what I'm going to do without washing my brush, I'm picking up some white paint, and I'm going to get it to go lighter and lighter as it goes up towards this left-hand corner. Oops, I got that out into the water. That just kind of went flying off of my brush. And I'm going to just bring this over into the left side like this, just getting them to kind of blend as I go. And then up in that left-hand side, I'm just going to be using white paint. I didn't wash my brush, but I only picked up white. I'm going to go a little bit slower as I go down this edge in through here. And you can certainly, take your time, go as slow as you want to get nice clean edges, or you can have messy edges like me and just call it a painterly style. Whatever works for you is totally fine. And I'm just going to get it to be all painted in here. And then we're going to be utilizing our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got your base coat for your sign in here, you can do more than one layer, or you can just kind of sit with that one layer, let it dry, see if it's everything that you had hoped it would be. And then if you want to do a second coat, feel free to do so. But I think I might just kind of fly with this, see how it looks when it's dry. And then I will be grabbing my chalk in preparation for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're drawing an outline for our bird. I'm going to be using my piece of chalk, and I'll give you your markers, and we'll connect the markers, and hopefully we'll have the shape of a beautiful pelican who really wants to go fishing. So typically when I'm instructing how to paint a bird, I give you the information that all birds can start out with two basic shapes: a circle for the head and an egg for the body. Obviously, all birds, different kinds of birds have different length necks and different kinds of beaks and different kinds of tails, but we can start them all with those two basic shapes. So that's how we're going to go ahead and do this one. So I'm going to do my head around this area up in through here. My head, relatively speaking to the body, is much smaller and much farther away from the body. So I'm going to be doing a circle about, I would say, 2 inches away from the top and 2 inches away from the side, and my circle is about 2 inches tall and 2 inches wide. So somewhere around here is where I am creating my circle. The egg I'm going to have in this area in through here. So if you come up about halfway, up or down halfway into your canvas, and then you come over from the right hand side, I am just a little bit to the right of where that circle is. So I'm halfway up or down my canvas, and when I come in, I am just a little bit further in than here. I'm giving you a couple of markers so we can connect those markers and have a good balance to it. And then I'm going to come to the left about 2 inches from that, make myself another marker. My last marker for my egg, I'm going to have right about here. So this is about, I would say, a third of the way in from the right hand side of the canvas and about 3 inches up from the bottom of my canvas. So now I'm going to make my egg shape in through here. I'm going to connect these two like this, and then I'm gonna go ahead, and when I connect this to here, I'm gonna have the egg, or the roundness of the egg, kind of go a little bit further out to the left than this marker in through here. So a little bit further out to the left, and then when I go to do this one in through here, I'm gonna go a little bit further out to the right than my marker. So something like this to give it some good body to it. So that's going to be my egg shape, and of course you can adjust it a little bit if you feel the need to. And then I'm going to connect the head to the body with the neck. So if you have your little markers that you created for the first part, those can be your markers to connect the head. So I'm going to start on the right hand side of the body, or the head, and I'm going to bring it in about halfway between these two and then kick it back out. So I've got up and through here, I'm going to bring it in about halfway and then kick it back out, something like that. And then on the left hand side, I'm going to have my neck more narrow at the top where it meets the head, and then it's going to look like it gets wider down in through here. So I'm going to start pretty narrow, that little chalk mark unnecessarily. So pretty narrow up in through here, like this, and then it's going to get wider and wider, probably about 1 inch wide at its widest area in through here, and then just meet it back down in like that. Then I need to put a beak on here. So this beak is super huge, super long. So to know where the tip of it is going to be, I'm going to come up about halfway between my head and here, so right about here, and I'm going to come to the left really pretty far. So I would say about 2 inches to the left of here is about as far out to the left, and about half the height of here. So that's about the tip of my beak. I can do a pretty much of a straight line from the head to the beak on the top side of the beak, but I'm going to come down the front of the head just a little bit, somewhere in through here, and then just give myself a pretty straight line in through there. And then on the bottom side, I'm going to give it a little bit of a curve in through here for that sack that they have at the bottom of their beak, and then it'll be pretty straight after that. So I'm going to start in through here, going to give it just kind of a gentle curve like that, and then I'm going to get it to go straight into the beak part. And of course you could certainly, if you felt that you went too wide, you can take a little bit of water on a brush and kind of just bring back some of that chalk a little bit if you feel like any of those edges need to be adjusted. That's the beautiful part about chalk, is it can be erased and modified and all that good stuff. And then I need a couple of legs. So my legs are pretty wide apart on this particular type of bird from this angle. So I'm going to bring this leg somewhere in this vicinity. I'm going to bring it pretty much down a little bit further than here, so maybe about a half of an inch or maybe like 1 inch away from that. And then I'm just going to give myself these little like webbed marks so I know where I want it to be. And then I'm going to go about half. Actually, I think my other leg I'm going to have about right below here. So if you come right below here, that'll be your other leg. Bring it down almost the same length, and then just give yourself a couple of little marks for where you want that foot to be. And the tail, we'll extend the tail a little bit as we paint in the bird, and same thing with the head, but this will give us a nice basic outline. So we'll use our medium brush for the next step. So do any adjustments that you feel necessary. Put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the base coat for our bird. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm just going to be using that gray color that we created for the sign. So all of this is going to be pretty simple, with the fact that we're just going to be painting inside our outline that we already created. I'm not going to be doing anything fancy until I get to the bottom of the feathers, because that's when I will be kind of changing the shape or adding to the shape a little bit. I'm also going to be adding a little bit to the shape of the end of my beak. So I'm just kind of coloring in where I had the outline for the beak, and then at the end they have this little like bubble part at the end. I'm not quite sure what this is, but it's the end of their beak and it's like this little bubble part, bumpy part on it. I don't know if it helps them catch their fish or if it tricks their fish or what its purpose is, but it's a cute little yellow bubble part at the end of their nose or at the end of their beak. And so I added that, and then as I go through the rest of the beak, I'm just coloring it in. And again, if you have part of your chalk that is still showing around the edges, you can certainly erase that with a bit of water, or just go all the way to the edge of it, whatever works for you. I know that when I'm coloring in after I have that chalk mark on there, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go all the way to the edge of that particular area. So if there's any areas that you know still have showing after you've painted it in, you can certainly erase it with that water. And then I'm just bringing this all the way to the edge here. I think I'm gonna just make sure that this looks like it kind of feeds into one another and through there we go, and then just bringing it all the way to the edge. So where I'm going to extend this is going to be down at the bottom of my egg shape. That's going to be the tail feathers. So I'm going to be coloring this whole area in with my gray color. And then when I get to the bottom, which is very soon, I'm going to start to add the illusion or the outline kind of those tail feathers that are going to be popping out a little bit more than this generic shape here. So I'm going to have them coming out a little bit on this left. So all I'm really doing is pulling out pieces that are going to resemble the edges of the feathers, and then I'm going to bring this end down past where my foot is. So I'm going to have a couple of feathers, really just kind of these tail feathers, but you can't really see it now that it's on my gray. It seems to be a pretty similar color. I think I'm going to add white just so you guys can see it. So I'm bringing this down just a little bit past where my feet are, and I'm going to just kind of ruffle the edge right along here. So it ends up looking like there is pieces of those feathers. And we will be adding, this is actually going to be black feathers by the time we're done, but right now it's just providing us that base coat. And then for my feet and my legs, I want them to be a little bit wider where they meet the body. So I'm going to just start with my vertical line in through here, and then I will just widen it just a little bit where it meets that body. And again, you kind of can't really see mine that much, so I'm going to just add, I think I'm going to add a tiny bit of black so it's a little bit darker so you guys can see it on camera. So something like this is going to be where I put my feet. They are these little cute webbed feet. Well, I say little, they're actually pretty big for as far as bird feet go. And then on this right hand side, again, I'm going to start with just my vertical line going in through here. I'm going to beef up that leg a little bit up at the top, just so it is not just a stick coming out of the body. And then on that foot, I'm using my gray plus a tiny bit of black, again, just so you guys can see it. So it's going to come out in this webbed type of way where it looks like it's kind of flat against the surface of the platform that he is walking on or standing on. So I'm going to do it something like this, and then we are going to be switching to our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer on your bird, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our sign. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I know that's what I told you that I was going to use, but I'm also going to suggest a piece of chalk. We're going to do all of the little details, and I think it would be wise if we did the circle with chalk first, as opposed to just kind of going in with red paint and crossing our fingers that we get us the circle that we're happy with that. So I've got my piece of chalk. I'm going to draw my circle first, and I have my sign tipped a little bit, so I'm going to have my circle kind of tipped a little bit. I'm having it a little bit further away from the left than it is from the right, so I'm just going to make myself a little marker there, maybe a little marker at the a quarter of an inch to half of an inch from here, maybe one over here, and then I'm going up a little bit more than halfway up my sign, and then I'm just going to kind of give myself a circle that is possibly a little bit smaller on the right hand side, and I'm just going slow to give myself something that I will be content with. I'm thinking that's pretty good. I don't really need it to be perfect. I just wanted it to give me some guide so I don't freak out with red paint on my brush and say, oh my god, it's somewhere where I don't want it to be. So I'm going to do my post first. I got my small brush. My light source is over on the left hand side, so I'm going to have a shadow underneath this part of the sign, a shadow on the right, and then a highlight on the left. So I'm going to start with black paint on my small brush. I'm going to come right underneath the sign itself. I'm going to cast a little bit of a diagonal shadow from the sign onto the post, something like this, and then I'm just going to bring my shadow down that right hand side. So one of my tricks when I'm doing skinny lines like this, or where I want the lines to be pretty clean looking, is I will often have water on my brush. So right now I have black paint with a little bit of water on my brush, which is allowing for me to get these kind of long, smoother type of paint strokes and a clean edge. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white right now without washing my brush, and I'm going to give myself a highlight over here on this left hand side. And because I didn't wash my brush, it will seemingly kind of blend in and make some parts of it a little bit on the grayer side, and you can just kind of keep finagling that. If you want more darkness, put a little bit more black on your brush. If you want more lightness, put more white on your brush, and you can just kind of keep manipulating that until you have it in whatever lightness and darkness that you want. And then I'm going to move up to my details on my sign up top. So I am going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start with my red circle. So I've got just red paint on my brush, and I'm feeling like my circle's in a pretty good spot. I might end up changing it a little bit as I go through this process, but just going to kind of get it on here. I'm using a good amount of paint, and I'm just kind of following my outline. And this is one of those, I start pretty narrow on my paint stroke in order to allow me room to kind of manipulate it or change it a little bit as I'm painting it. So I might find that one side looks like it needs to be pulled out a little bit. So that's gonna, by starting with a narrow line, it gives me more margin for error as I'm kind of building that particular line. So I can adjust it wherever I feel that it needs to be adjusted, provided I have a similar, by the time I'm done, I have a similar thickness around the entire piece. This might not be perfect, but we're freehanding it, so no need to be perfect when you're freehanding something. And then I'm going to put a diagonal line to create the symbol of something that is not allowed to be done. So I'm just freehanding this in through here with my red paint. And red paint does tend to be on the translucent side, so you may find that you want to do a couple of layers to get it into that vibrancy that you want. That's going to be a visual preference on your part as you go through your final detail kind of stages to it. Then now that I've got my red on there, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to start putting my black details on it. So I'm going to start with my my border that I'm going to be doing, and I'm just going to be using watered down black paint. I'm doing my border as just maybe about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of my sign. So I'm just watching the edge of my sign. I have watered down black paint on my brush right now, and I'm just going about 1/4 of an inch away. If you can, make your line a little bit thicker on this left side than on the right side. That will add to the illusion of this sign being tipped towards us. And I have a super shaky hand, especially after I've had 12 cups of coffee for the day. I've only had 3 today though. So what I'm doing to provide myself with a stable line is I am resting my palm of my hand on my canvas, and that's allowing me to have a little bit straighter of a line. And I also, because I have the water on my brush, I'm able to get a long continuous line because I have moisture within my paintbrush. So I'm going to try and avoid getting my hand in that wet red paint. So if my hand gets in your way, I'm sorry about that. Let's see if I can do, oops, I just made a mark where I didn't want to, but that's okay. So I'm just going to kind of, I like to keep my eye on the prize. So as I am doing these lines, I'm typically watching where I'm headed. So like here, although I'm going to start here, as I'm drawing my line, I'm watching my end point, and that helps to guide my brush into that final spot. So that really helps me when I'm doing these long continual detail line. And of course you can, you know, if you get done doing that and you're like, oh, my edges are not as finished as I want to, you can certainly pick up some of that original gray and or white and just kind of clean up those outside edges. So that's something that you'll have to make a determination on your part if you still need any little final tweaks along those edges. And then I'm going to go in for my letters. So again, I'm just going to use watered down black paint. I'm going to do my word fishing first, because that's going to be the one that is right next to my sign here. So I know that I'm going to want my letters to be a little bit bigger on the left and a little bit smaller on the right. So you can do a couple of different things. You can either just really go freehand and whatever happens, happens. But if you want to kind of plan it out, I know that the word fishing has 7 letters in it. So the H is the 4th letter. So that would in essence kind of be in the center of my word and of my sign. So if I start with my H first, that allows me kind of good amount of spacing from the left to the right. And, you know, it doesn't have to be super perfect. I'm going to use block letters. You could certainly use your own penmanship. You can do kind of whatever you want. So I've got my H on there. Now I'm just going to kind of work my way right to left. And if I'm going for kind of equal height, but I'm going to attempt to get them a smudge shorter on the right hand side, but I might not be 100% successful. But you could kind of draw out the top line and the bottom, like you could have a piece of paper or a piece of, you know, draw yourself a line for all of them to be at the same height, and you can certainly erase that line after you're done. Oh, my G just grew a little bit bigger than I wanted it to. That's the joy of painting. You never can predict everything that your brush is going to do throughout the process. And try and spell it correctly. I've had many times either I have misspelled something or one of my students has misspelled something. It's quite fun when it happens, especially when you're doing something that you should really know how to spell. But, you know, when we're into painting, sometimes our brains don't necessarily work as we feel that they should. I just had a little blue on my brush that I had to wipe off. So I've got this going on in through here, and then I just have my F to contend with, and I'm getting them a little bit bigger on this left-hand side, but not a ton. And again, you could certainly mathematically plan these all out so they're exactly the way, you know, perfectly aligned the way that you want them. But little tricks like having this part meet up, the F, halfway up the F meets up with halfway up the H. That helps to visually keep them in line. And then the word no, I know that between the two letters would probably be between the H. So I'm gonna have this word bigger than the word fishing. So I'm gonna just kind of start my O over here, and then I'll go ahead and put my N to the left of it, something like I'm going right about here. And of course you can certainly write whatever you'd like to on your sign. You can really have some fun with this and let your creative juices flow and write anything that you want. And then I'm going to do the little silhouette of a fish in through here. And of course you could put, you know, anything that you want. You can have fun. You could put a shark in here. You could put, I don't know, a little, I don't know what other kind of fish, a trout, a guppy, a betta fish. You can really have fun with what you want to put in through here. I'm just putting a generic shape for a fish, something that resembles a fish to me, but you might want yours a little bit different shape. So something like that, and I'm going to just paint it in. Maybe I'll leave a little white spot or gray spot to indicate that it's got an eye, something like that. And then I'm just going to put a little hook on the other side of my sign. And then once I've got all the pieces on here, I would just sit and fiddle and make any little adjustments that I want. I think I'm going to have my hook going, I think I'll have this coming over in this direction, kind of just like a J of sorts, and then maybe a little bobber thing in through here. And of course you can modify it whatever way you want. And then we're going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your no fishing sign or whatever message on your sign you'd like, you can wash and dry that small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our head and our beak. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, red, yellow, white. So I'm not using blue or green, but I'm going to use all the other colors. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to be using some brown paint to separate the beak from the head. So I have 2 points in through where the neck meets the head in through here, and the head kind of meets the beak in through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself 3 bumps. So I'm going to have 1 bump, 2 bump, and then 3 bump. So this is going to represent the various pieces of the beak. Then I'm going to take that brown paint and I'm going to give myself lines. So I'm going to meet this, this indent to the tip of my beak. So I'm going to take this, and these can be loose sketcherly lines. They don't have to be firm lines at all. They are just intended to give you kind of guidance as we go through this and give you some shadowy type of areas. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this line in through here, just giving myself a little bit of a light kind of line going towards that beak. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up some yellow paint and I'm going to mark where my eye is going to go. So it's going to go within this bump just behind it, and it's going to be like the size of a pea, something like this. So pretty close to the top of the head, pretty close to that bump area. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the tip of the beak. Just yellow paint is going to give me the makings of that cute little piece at the end of their nose. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to finish the beak part. So this is where I'm going to have that pink type of skin look down in through here, and then it kind of fades into some lighter areas. This is, in essence, from here up is the top of the beak, and from here down is that skin type of part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a pink color with red and white, and I'm going for a pretty deep type of pink, so it doesn't need to be too light. You can certainly modify yours as much as you want, but this is about the tone that I'm going to be going. And I'm going to be coloring in my beak with this pink color, allowing for that brown to still show. I'm going to utilize that in a second as part of a as like a shadowy kind of area. So I'm just getting, and I'm just again using this light kind of sketcherly brush stroke, allowing for the gray underneath to work to my benefit as a nice neutralizing base color for this beak. So now that I've got that established, what I want to do, I just need to add some highlights and some shadows. So I'm going to have highlights on the top side of that beak, as well as some of these parts kind of curve out. So in through here, this part curves out, so I'd have a highlight in through here. I'm going to have a shadowy area in through here to indicate that that piece of skin kind of dips in, and maybe some shadow underneath it. So I'm going to not wash my brush. I'm picking up a little bit of brown and black on my brush with a touch of water, and I'm starting with my shadowy areas. So I'm going to put brown and black down at this right at the bottom of my beak, somewhere in through here. And again, I'm just kind of using this real light sketcherly type of brush stroke, something like that. I'm going to utilize a little bit more brown on my brush. I didn't wash it, but I'm going to put a little bit of a shadowy area coming in through here and I'm blending it in with that pink to indicate that this is like a little indent in the skin kind of area. And you can always pick up that pink back up to if you feel like you've overdone it. Picking up more black and brown on my brush with a touch of water to give myself a nice deep crease in where the beak actually opens. So I'm going to put this nice and dark in through here, as well as bring this little bit of a darkness to the tip of the beak in through here, indicating that that little piece opens up too, and this is a nice deep crevice in through there. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I want a little bit of shadow up in through here by the eye, but not much, so I just wiped my brush off, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a shadow up in through here. Not a whole heck of a lot, but just something that really is going to give me a little bit of dimension in through there. And now I'm going to finish it up with white and pink. So I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel, picking up a little bit of pink plus a little bit of white to give myself some little highlight areas. So I'm going to have a little bit of a highlight in through here, and all the while I want all these pieces to kind of talk together and make them feel and look like they belong together. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight in through here, like this is a piece of skin that is popping out just a little bit more, so making sure that it blends in with that neighboring area. I'm going to put a real big highlight up here, just using white on my brush. I didn't wash it, but I did pick up just white. I want this to really read as though it's being illuminated by the sun. So just kind of getting this on here in a very bright kind of way. So I just keep adding a little bit more white onto my brush. And again, I'm making sure that I'm just using this light sketcherly type of brush stroke, so it allows it to have soft edges to it and blends in with that neighboring pink, and of course, or the pink that's underneath it. And of course, if you needed to add more pink, feel free to do so. And I'm going really white or really light on this edge piece as well. So although I am using white as my dominant highlight color, because I'm using acrylic paint, and the type of paint that I use is a thin student grade paint, this allows it to see the colors that are underneath it. So I use that to my benefit, and I allow it to be translucent, putting a little highlight on the tip of this beak in through there. And then of course you can keep adjusting it as you see fit. I think actually I want a little more of this pinky color in through here, just to give that a little bit more dimension, maybe a little bit more of my brown to give this a little bit more of a dip in through there. There we go. And you can just keep playing with that all you want. I'm going to go right to the eye, so I'm putting a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. Going to give myself a little bit of a black pupil of sorts. Then I'm going to use my black and brown and a little bit of water on my brush to give me the little shadow around the eyeball. So right now that I'm getting into the head, I'm thinking fur the whole time. So I'm going to be using really these gentle type of brush strokes to try and keep everything nice and with soft edges, or with little feathery kind of edges. I think I want a little bit more black on my brush to give a little bit more of detail in through here. And of course, I'm just going right around that eye and reshaping it if I feel it needs to be shaped a little bit. They do have a dark outline around these eyes, so you can certainly play with that all you want. And then I'm just going to finish up the head in through here. So this area in through here is actually works into what I'm going to call the cheek. So I'm going to have a light area in through here that looks like it puffs out a little bit, and I'm going to have a darker area in through here that is almost kind of separates that head from what's gonna work its way into the neck. And we'll work on the neck in a minute, but this kind of just gives us that separating type of area. I do also know that the right side is going to be a little bit in the shadows, so I'm going to put just a little bit. I'm just rubbing my brush right now, and then I'm going to put a little bit of white on my brush to give myself this bright area in through here that really talks to this highlight right in through here. So they look to me to be of similar pieces, or they are connected in some way, and then just tapping my brush to get this highlight to kind of blend out into the darkness. I'm going to put more white on my brush to give a highlight to the top of the head in through here. I'm going to tap my brush and give it a little bit of texture on that forehead, like there's a couple little fluffy pieces of feathers or fur. Feathers, I think they'd just be feathers, even short feathers up at the top of the head. And then I'm going to go ahead and give some cute little fluffiness at the back of the head in through here. So I'm going to use white, and I'm probably going to put a little bit of black too, so I can have some dimensional elements in there. So I just picked up a touch of black, and so the diversity of the white and the black is going to make it look nice and textured. And then we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you have your head all nice and completed, and of course you can sit and fiddle with it all that you would like. Once you've got that completed, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the neck and the main body of the bird. We'll leave the feet and the legs for the next step. So I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to be using black, gray, and white paint. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put my black areas for my feathers on first. Then we'll go and finish the neck, and then we'll come and finish the white feathers and the little highlights on our black feathers after we do the neck. So I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to start with some black paint on my brush. And so the type of pelican that I chose to do has these big white wings on the right and the left, and then they have this big black back tail feather type of area. So I'm going to kind of outline these the wing areas from the main back area. So I'm going to go somewhere in this vicinity, we'll call it the shoulder, and give myself a light sketcherly curved line that's going to come back a little bit farther than where my leg is, so somewhere in this vicinity. And then I'm going to come up maybe about an inch or two up above my leg, and I'm going to give myself a underneath area. I'm going to kind of outline the bottom part of the bird in like this. And then on this right side, I'm going to bring my brush stroke up in an upward kind of motion, which is going to allow us to have what's going to be kind of the undercoat for the big white wing that's going to come on in a minute, or in a couple minutes. Then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the left hand side, but this wing, the white wing, we're only going to see a little piece of it over on the left-hand side. So I'm going to start somewhere in this vicinity, and I'm just going to kind of segregate a little tiny section over on the left side of the body, right in through there. I'm going to give it an area on the top part of the back, which will be white feathers as well. So I'm just going to kind of, and this can be a really uneven section in through here. I noticed when I was looking at these birds that some of them have a lot of white feathers up here, some of them have very little bit, so you can certainly utilize your own creative juices on that. And then this entire section in through here is going to be black feathers. So what I'm going to do is I'm leaving it pretty with not much activity right in through here and on the left side, just not a super straight line. I am still using this brush stroke that is in the direction of the what I would feel to be the direction of the feathers falling, but I'm not having a really clean edge where it's going to meet the white section. And then I'm going to color this whole area in, and if you have little spots of gray showing through, that's awesome, just let them happen. And then I'm going to bring it down into this bottom area that we had already kind of designated with the gray paint, and just kind of giving myself this little edge of the feathers coming down in through here. I think I want this to be a little bit fluffier out in through here, so I'm going to poof this out just a little bit more, give it a little bit wider kind of base over here on the left side. It looked a little bit too narrow to me, so I just pulled it out a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush. It doesn't have to be super clean. I'm picking up some of my original gray plus a tiny bit of black. So I washed my brush to ensure that I didn't have too much black on it. And I'm going to have a shadow area on the main part of the back of this neck and maybe over here a little bit, and then it's going to get lighter and lighter as it comes to the left. So I'm going to be using a dotting type of brush stroke to get this to look like it's got some texture to it. You could certainly utilize like a soft circle or something like that, but for me, when I'm doing this type of soft areas, especially on a bird where I know that it's just this short, you know, soft type of fur or feathers, that I like to have the texture to it. So that's where I use this dotting type of stippling brush stroke. I'm bringing it a little bit in through here. I know I'm going to have my white feathers in through here, but I'll still have a little bit of a shadow to indicate the contour of the body. Now I'm picking up a little bit of white without washing my brush. So what's going to happen is, because I didn't wash my brush, I'm going to gradually get it to go lighter and lighter on that left hand side. So I'm just working my way to the left, and then when I get all the way to the left, what I'll do is I will start picking up, I might even wash my brush, and I'm going to pick up white paint. I think I am. I'm going to wash my brush to get that super highlight on the left hand side. So I washed and dried my brush, and I'm picking up white paint, and I'm going to go really bright over here on the left hand side to indicate where that light source is coming from, and you can get it to just blend in with the darker side. So what I'm going to do, wipe my brush off and just kind of lightly rub it in or tap it in so it blends a little bit, but you don't need to go overboard. And if you wanted to, if you felt like this back side, if the contrast wasn't enough against your water, if you weren't seeing enough of it, you could add little bits of lightness, just a touch to that edge. That'll indicate that maybe it's catching a little bit of the sunshine over on the other side of the body. But that's just to add that if you can't see the edge of it, that's a great way to add that little bit of information. And then I'm just going to use white paint for my beautiful bright feathers. I'm going to use a lot, and I'm going to do it really heavy up at the top, something like this. I'm just kind of tapping it in for at the moment, and then when I go to apply it or to finish those feathers, I'm going to be pulling it in the direction that I feel that those feathers would be falling. So I want it to, if I can, be the lightest up at the top. So I'm going to have the most white up at the top, and then as it comes down towards this black area, I'm going to utilize some of that gray from underneath as like little shadowy notes to these feathers. So it does not have to be a solid color throughout that entire area. I'm going to go ahead and put some in through here. So I've just got the bright white paint on my brush right now, and I'm not pulling it or saturating the area with that solid white. I'm utilizing that undercoat that we put there initially to work as shadows between some of these feathers, which is going to give it a nice natural dimensional element to it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some of them over on this left hand side as well, and I'm just really tapping in some really bright spots but trying not to overdo it, so hopefully I can utilize again some of that undercoat of the gray as a base coat, or those shadowy type of areas. And you can just keep building the white in this bright area as much as you want. You may end up layering it more and more just to kind of get the that white to get brighter and brighter in this one top area, because if you can get it as light as you can get it right up and through here, that's going to give some great dimensional element to it. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful wings and your neck all nice and finished, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our legs, feet, and the shadow that's on the ground. But I did notice after I got done doing the last step, I had mentioned that I was going to put some highlight on these black feathers, and I neglected to do that. So we're gonna do that really quick. I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm just going to pick up some black and white paint on my brush, and I'm really just going to add a couple of delicate little highlights where this kind of curves down the back. You could use your original gray as a little bit of a highlight, but this just gives you that the movement of it, you know, and allows the viewer to understand that it's kind of popping out a little bit. So that's all I'm going to do. So, well, I'm moving on to the legs. I just washed and dried my brush. What I want for here is I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on the back side of that leg, and I'm going to put a little highlight on the front side of the leg. And then as I come down these feet, I noticed that the majority of this style of flamingo had like a bluish type of skin to their feet. So that's what we're going for. We're going to go for blue feet. And then we'll have our shadow going over on the surface of the dock. So I'm going to start with some black and brown on my brush. At the same time, I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow underneath this back side of the leg, something like this, and just kind of fade it out into the rest of the leg. I'll do the same thing over here on the left side, and you can leave a little bit of the fur or feathers from the body if you want to make sure that you can see the difference between the two. So once I've got that on there, I'm just going to pick up a little bit of brown and white and add a touch of a highlight on that front side of the thigh, I guess it would be called, just a teeny tiny bit, just to, you know, give a little bit of highlight and of shape, I guess. Then I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up some ultramarine blue and my gray. I don't know if I said I was going to use gray or not, but I am. I'm using ultramarine blue and gray, and I'm giving myself a base coat for these legs. So just a little bit of those two colors. And again, I think I need a little more blue so we can see it. Not doing anything super fancy here, just kind of giving us the illusion of some blue legs and feet. Just going down on the same path that we had originally created. I'm going into my little toes so they look like webbed feet, and I am making them flat on this right side at the bottom, so that way it gives the tells the viewer that, you know, he's flat surfaced right now. And I'm just doing it with the blue to get this on here, and then I'm going to put a little highlight and a shadow to give the form to it. So I'm going to wipe my brush off, picking up a tiny bit of black paint to give myself a little bit of a shadow underneath the foot, in through here, maybe a little bit between them their webbed toes, maybe a touch on this right hand side, a little bit like that cascades onto the foot, something like this, just a little bit of shadow. And again, I'm really just kind of giving a little bit of dimension here so we can see the different parts of the foot. And then I'm going to, and we can see that the back side comes all the way down. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint to add my little highlights to the webbed feet and toes and legs. So I'm adding a little bit of a white highlight down this back side of the, we'll call it the ankle, something like this, just to give it a little bit of, again, something so we can see the shape of that particular part of the bird. And then I'm going to put just a little bit of a highlight on them, on the toes. So maybe this tells the story of, you know, how it's shaped and the little webbed parts in between, but not much, just kind of so so you can see it on top of the surface of the ground, so you can see little highlights and, you know, just the little pieces of it. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to add a shadow of the bird onto the surface. So for me, my light source is over, like, up and to the left. So I'm going to have the shadow of his legs kind of coming out in this direction, and then part of the body is going to be on the surface here, and then it'll climb up the wall and be on the surface there. So I'm going to be using brown and black paint with water on my brush. So I want this to be translucent and see-through, so the water is going to help me to do that. So I'm going to just putting my head back for a second here so I can plan this out. So I'm going to go somewhere in this vicinity for this leg, like that. I think I need a little bit more paint and a little bit more. There we go, something like that. And I'm going to do it at a similar angle from this foot. And of course the foot wouldn't really be shadowing as much as the leg would be. So I'm not really, you know, I'm coming from the foot, but I'm considering this to be the shadow from the leg. Then I'm going to put a little bit of the body part. So, and this can be skewed because it's, you know, depending on where that light source is coming from, you as the painter is the one who's telling the viewer where it's coming from. So it can be skewed a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and come up and put some of it on this surface up in through here, and just a little bit of water, maybe the black and the brown, and then I think I'm going to have this just kind of coming over this entire area in through here. And then when you get this step done and you have all of your cute feet finalized and a nice shadow on your surface, we are going to be using this same brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm using black paint. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one, and I'm going to do it right in the ground right here. So I'm signing mine with my initials. You could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like is totally fine. It's your painting, you sign it however you'd like to. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very fun bird painting. And I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.